All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brand in Progress. This is episode 3. We are doing a poster critique design, and we have a special guest. We have Anna Fine. Recently, she's been featured to compete in the Fig match at Config. So she's a superhero for me, and she reigned victorious. So, yeah, we've met a few months ago, and we've been become good friends, and so she's gonna help us explore different poster designs. We have some updated assets in terms of social media assets and things like that since we last streamed, and we're gonna dig into it. So without further ado, give it up for Anna Fine. Woohoo!
I was not prepared for the sound effects.
Yeah, it's a little official, maybe too much, but
No, I love it.
All right, so how you feeling, Anna? I'm super excited to get designing together. So, yeah, how you been?
I'm great. I'm excited as well. I saw some of the work that you shared while we were at Config, and it's looking really good. So I'm ready for this.
I'm ready for you to tear it up and just shake it all over. Do you wanna? Is there anything else that you'd like to share about yourself, like a little introduction?
Sure. I'm a freelance design director or senior product designer, depending on which side of the aisle you fall on. I have a very generalized background. Started out in art direction, fell into product design, kind of married the two, and wound up in marketing while doing branding as well. So somewhere between the trifecta of art direction, product design, and branding is my shtick.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're based out of
Denver,
Denver.
Colorado.
Okay.
That's a good part to start with. Yeah. Moved here by way of New York.
Yeah. Nice. All right, cool. So shall we just jump right in?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Here we are in Figma. Let's start. If you want to follow me, This is initially, maybe you can kind of rip this apart first. So I was just trying to boil down in terms of, this is like a YouTube thumbnail, just the elements that make up a thumbnail. And I assume this can be applied to like a poster design too. So, like, what do you think of what I've kind of done so far?
So, couple questions before I answer that. Is the 6 components that you've broken down here, are those requirements or are those nice to have?
They're nice to have, I would say. Obviously, so I was going down and studying the greats. We got the Webflow thumbnails, we have Flux, and they all had in common was obviously a title, main title, and then maybe an image. And then after that, really, it's just additional stuff like subtitles. Icons is definitely a bonus, or more particular for me. But I would say definitely a title, and then probably an image, and then everything else are nice to have.
Okay, follow-up question. What is the significance of all of the content down on the lower third, the part 2, the segment, the date?
Yeah, okay, so I would say this is like main title and then subtitle. So for example, this will be like title of the stream or something, an interview, and then it would be with Brandon. This would be the date, so just like tertiary information. And then this is more of like a segment, so it could be an interview, it could be live, it could be a speed build, it could be a demo. So I like to just have that in just this one corner. And then the icons is just a little sprinkle of something a little extra, like, so in this case this would be the interview would be relating to Figma, or it'll be like this one, Figma Webflow. We're playing with these different programs or platforms. So
okay.
Yeah.
So
what I'm thinking.
So if I were to paraphrase, we have kind of the context of what the show is, what the specific episode is, and then when it airs and what content is being spoken to. Okay. last question, is the content being spoken to, like the icons at the bottom, are those things that are in the like byline of the YouTube section, or like some kind of like SEO related discoverability?
Mm, the only thing for YouTube, the only SEO or searchability is like in the title.
Right.
So it's interesting. So there's like for YouTube thumbnails, usually they don't have this much detail, and most of the extra details is actually in the title, which is searchable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometime, let's say Figma to Webflow, I'll probably put that in the title as well. So
Mhm.
then it's searchable, but not necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason I ask is because I think those like icons speaking to the topic of things is a nice thing to have. It gives context to the episode, but maybe it is busying the hierarchy of the thumbnail,
Okay.
especially considering the size of the thumbnail. You know, I know there's like a larger when you land on the page, but then like there's the smaller for discoverability purposes. And if you're scrolling through YouTube, you're going to click on the thing that catches your eye first. And if you see a lot of text and not as much image, you're probably not going to click on that first.
Yeah. True.
So with that, I think where you're starting to break down like the colors into like specific types of content, I think is really interesting, like framework for the utility of the rainbow line thing. That was really articulate. But but I think there might be a way to marry some of the imagery and the color system in a way that is a little more eye-catching.
Okay.
Maybe that's like a duotone. So maybe there's like a color overlay that happens on the black and white imagery to kind of make it pop. Maybe there's like some of the iconography of that's being spoken to is also kind of like in the background a little bit. So yeah, this is a good. Mr. Beast is like,
Yeah.
it's very visual. It's very like it's gonna catch your eye, or like, what the hell is that?
I know, but it's so like
It's
cheesy,
super cheap. It's super
and cringe. But it works. That's the thing.
right. It works,
Yeah.
but for his specific audience. So what I mean to say is there's elements of what he does that is like applicable for what you're doing that you can adopt to your specific audience, which is not going to respond to this in the same way as something a little more design sophisticated, we'll say. And so I think if we can find a way to just make the image pop a little bit more and integrate the title in a way, I think that it'll give you a lot of visual interest and catch people's eye. And I think with the typefaces that you have been playing around with, there's a lot of opportunity for it to like carry a lot of weight. But to do so, it requires the whole less is more rule, right? Where you say less and leave kind of the specifics of the things that would make it discoverable to the title. And that's why I was asking about, SEO and whatnot, because if it doesn't help discoverability, especially on an image, which I mean, very rarely does an image provide SEO benefits, then you might as well keep it to the meat of what you're trying to convey, which is who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and what show this is. So my initial reaction would just be the color is going to the content. And as a result, you're getting, if you do like what I call a squint test, where you kind of squint your eyes and look at the overall colors, you're getting maybe 20% of color, and everything else is black and white.
Right.
And I think particularly in marketing situations, which this
Mm-hmm.
essentially is,
Mm-hmm.
you want to be louder. So while your core brand might be more reserved and a little more finessed,
Mm-hmm.
when you get into situations of advertising and marketing, you want to get a little louder. And I realize that I'm saying that in a sea of very loud images here.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the thing. You look at like all this, and it
Yeah,
is noisy. It is loud, and it. You know what? I think it all works. But I think, hey, if you put this amongst all this, it does kind of pop in
fair,
that way.
valid point.
Yeah.
Um,
But who
but
knows? Who knows?
But the difference is you see how big the type is, regardless of what,
Yes.
like whether it's a busy design or a minimalist design. The type is big, it's in your face, and it's very much about just enough to bring someone in.
Yeah.
And so I think, um, I guess, well, so the dream job, that one is
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
to what I was envisioning. Actually, that's pretty damn close.
Yeah.
So what I like about it though is it's not super in your face. It still has color and it still draws you in, but more importantly, it's
Mm,
got big in your face type, tells you exactly what you're getting into. Um,
right. So and then
so
this one's interesting because there's like the subtext, but then this is the main title. So that's
exactly,
interesting, right?
yeah, and I think those two examples in particular is kind of where my gut reaction was.
Mm,
Mind you, to your point, in a sea of color, it does, it does kind of blend in.
mm-hmm.
But my counter argument to that is the reason all of these have such colorful, large type, uh, layouts is because it works. It's validated.
Mm-hmm.
It's proven to catch people's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there a like a similar YouTube show that you referenced for this?
Oh, like my design?
Yeah.
Honestly, no. I was just starting. Okay, well, I'll show you kind of the evolution of this.
Okay.
Where are we here? I was just playing with like poster design first. So I mean, coming back to the original intent, I'm like, okay, I was just like very simple. This is what I would. It's like a editorial type,
Mm.
book cover or magazine cover. And then I was like, I kind of like these little elements here, and this is kind of like a weird barcode. Again, just playing around. I saw this somewhere, and I'm like, I kind of like these details in the bottom, and I'm like, why don't I put a title at the top, and then details in the bottom, and then image in the middle? So that's kind of how I was, yeah, how I started, and then
Okay.
I just put it in the where are we here? Yeah, in a YouTube landscape layout.
So I think first of all, I like what you're doing with the poster design. There's something really interesting in that, especially when you start getting into these more like, we'll call them minutia,
Mm-hmm.
because it starts to speak to something like, a little more of a contemporary editorial brand like Off-White or something, where you have,
Mm-hmm.
or CW, or these other, um, we'll call them streetwear.
Is Off-White editorial? Would you kind of consider that?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. They do some crazy, crazy stuff. Their version of editorial, though, is it's more experimental. It's more in kind of the experience of it, rather than like just pure visual, which traditionally editorial is. But that's not, like, look at, runways. That's all experience too, and that's technically a version of
Mm.
editorial if you want to get into the technical of it.
Okay.
I mean, every time you take a photo of it, right?
Yeah.
Like of someone walking down the runway, and there's all this like set design that happens behind it. That's part of the editorial experience. So,
Got it.
um, but that said, I think the design elements are great, but when you have design elements like this, you have to have a function first.
Mm.
Um, and so I think what I'm seeing here is like you're essentially treating this like a bar graph or a histogram or something where like the amount of color is relevant to the amount of the type of content that's being spoken to. If I were to hazard a guess here, right?
Mhm.
And maybe that's the intent, maybe it's not, I don't know, but that's at first blush. That's the kind of infographic type message that I'm getting from it. And that might be something that you want to adopt in your visual language, right? You might want to say, I want color to have a purpose. And if it has a purpose, therefore it has a communication in my brand.
Yep.
And then like standardize that and figure out what that is.
Mhm.
That said, that requires a user education, one that's not going to be conveyed at the point of a thumbnail.
Right.
Might be conveyed in an episode, it might be conveyed in some kind of like introduction to the episode, whatever, but that, like, in a thumbnail you have very limited real estate to make a lot of shit very appealing. And so I think what works here in this particular instance is you have a vertical format with what we'll say is a 70-30 ratio of image to content.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you go back to the thumbnail, now we've got maybe 60-40, probably 50-50. And so you start to lose the relationship of what makes that work. And I think that's not to say that the elements are not correct. Like, that's not to say that you can't have those things that kind of excited you about that editorial layout. But I am saying that the layout you currently have does not afford you the same impact.
Yeah, the proportions are off.
The proportions are off, and you've essentially sandwiched it. You've sandwiched the content, the image with content.
Yeah.
Instead of creating a more dynamic layout where you can use the same principles as the vertical format, but it's translated into a way that better speaks to a horizontal layout. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. Again, this is learning with Anna, and I assume I know nothing, and so this was like my first kick at it. But I'm learning a lot. So right, it's like you have this asset. What's the function of it? Mainly, it's to like grab attention or just say, "Hey, this is what we're about." But if we try to fit in too much information, honestly, because the experience of a person going through is just like, I have at best half a second, or like, couple seconds. So they just skim through, and so like they're probably not going to read all this information.
Exactly.
So yeah, interesting.
That's not to say it's not important information, and it needs to be spoken to somewhere. But the thumbnail is probably not the most advantageous place to put it.
Right. Okay. So coming back to like a poster design, then I mean, is it the same principle?
Yeah, actually. So it depends on who you speak to. If you talk to someone in advertising, there's this rule of distance to time spent looking at it. So if you're 40 feet away, you've got like 2 to 3 seconds of their attention. If you're 20 feet away, you've got maybe 5 to 8 seconds. If they're up close, then they're really reading it. Then you probably have their attention for a little bit longer, how much longer it takes to actually read the content that's there. Okay. So for that reason, when you see an out-of-home billboard along the side of a highway, it's probably maximum 7 words, because that's the most words you can read in the shortest amount of time and not get in a car crash.
Yeah.
And so it, like in advertising in particular, it's very much about what can you get at a glance? What's the quickest read, which is why a lot of advertising tends to be visual. So you start to look at like images. Maybe there's, the famous ad from the 60s that just says lemon, and it's a little Volkswagen Beetle. And that is probably the simplest you can get. So the second image at the top there is what you would have seen on a billboard. But if you
Mm.
click over to the next image, which has content below it, that's what you're going to see in a magazine, because again, the
Okay.
rule of amount of time and attention you can grab from someone is based on distance.
That's so
So,
cool. Okay.
so that's from an advertising perspective, which essentially is what YouTube is. You're looking at it from an attention standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The thumbnail is going to be your out of home billboard. And when they actually click into your page, you click into your episode, what have you, then you're going to get into the more editorial magazine type layout, because
Okay.
people are more intimately viewing your content.
Yeah. It's
If you
all
look
about
at this,
engagement.
exactly. Now, if you look at this from a branding perspective,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be different, because there's something called, well, actually, let me take a step back. We're going to get into teacher mode for a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
So good.
Okay. So the core principles of design, I know you know this, but I'm going to repeat it just for the purpose of
Please.
the conversation, is contrast, rhythm, balance, proportion, unity or emphasis, movement, right?
Okay.
Those are the things that fundamentally make up a good or bad design, period. So building on that, you have hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of those elements ladder up into ways of catching our attention and giving prominence to things, particularly through the use of color, the scale,
Mm-hmm.
however emphasis is demonstrated for that particular use case. But in branding, we go a step further. We say, okay, we understand hierarchy is important for the messaging,
Mm-hmm.
but in branding, we have some hierarchy of the elements themselves. And so a lot of times people say, make the logo bigger, because that's where the hierarchy is. From a branding perspective, you want the
Okay.
recognition.
Yeah.
But if you take it at face value, you just say, okay, what is brand, and what is the hierarchy, or what is the element, like the core elements that make up the brand. What you're actually talking about is something called a brand memory device. And I'm totally blanking on the author of the book I read. I will send it to you guys, and you can view it on your own time.
Memory device?
Brand memory device, or BMD. And so what a brand memory device is it's the one consistent element throughout the entire brand, all of the marketing, all of the internal stuff, everything. It is the one thing that is consistent and recognizable, regardless of what the context that it's in.
Okay.
So sometimes it's the logo, and that's Nike, right? You see the little swoosh, everywhere it is, that's Nike, Nike,
Yeah.
Nike, Nike. For something like Tiffany's, it's the color teal or blue-green, right? It's a very specific Tiffany blue that is the brand memory device. And I apologize, my dog is making noise. But so no matter where you go, if you see from a distance that color, you go, Tiffany's, that's the one.
Yeah.
So another version of this is for Google. For a long time, they actually pulled away from their G, and they used the red, yellow, green, blue as their mnemonic, or as their brand memory device. And that was the correlation for the brand. Another way of thinking about this is essentially, what is the through line? What is the one thing that no matter where it's being placed in whatever context, it's the thing that you instantly know is your brand. So with a poster, particularly vertical poster, you're going to want your content is the emphasis, but you're going to want something that speaks to the overall brand for recognizability, right? So these Nike examples are perfect. You have various imagery, you have various type treatments, but everything is consistent because you have one big swoosh.
Right? Yeah, there's a swoosh.
Mhm.
This one, oh yeah, it's always there. Or the iconic font type, right? Futura.
Well, so their font is dynamic now. For a long time, it was
Mm,
consistent, but now it's dynamic. So you
right,
can
like this.
sometimes italicized, it's sometimes wider, it's sometimes more narrow. It really just depends on its usage. The the way that I think about brand is always dependent on context. So if you were to draw, like, okay, I'm gonna make some ridiculous thing here. Okay, pretend I am a graph.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
um, and so uh, over here is going to be. I'm trying to think about this backwards because I'm doing it backwards.
You got that?
Um,
You mean X and Y axes?
yeah, you got
Yeah.
X and Y axes. Let's do it that way. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
there you
it.
go. You're
Okay.
learning math and finance stuff, right? So let's get
Yes,
back
I
into it.
actually am doing data analytics too, so that I am doing a lot of X and Y axis stuff. But so on the X axis, if we're talking about um, the the placement of like uh, let's say internal to external. So we've got internal in your company, then you've got maybe some business cards, maybe in store, and then you start to get into advertising and then digital and what have you. So like the closer you are to the y-axis is there we go. Now we're drawing.
Let's do it.
Right.
I mean,
All
yeah,
right.
let's get on the canvas. Why not?
Okay. I will yeah, here we go. So if we've got internal. Ooh, why are you there we go. To external, right?
Hmm.
So we're going to say, as examples, we've got advertising and we've got digital. We've got even more out there. And then we've got in company and we've got, let's say, I don't know, in store maybe if we're going to just theoretical. So then we've got core and then we've got, we'll say, exploratory.
Okay.
Okay. So if I were to break this into a science, which I have
Let's do
done
it.
because I'm that crazy person, um, what I like to think about brand elements, I think about the context of these elements more than anything because the elements are consistent. It's how you utilize them, right?
Hmm.
Um, so internally, it's going to be closer to the core brand. It's going to be a little quieter. It's going to be very much true to the rigidity of what's been established by the brand.
Hmm.
As you push out away from the identity of the company or the brand, and start going out into the world, it's
Hmm.
going to get a lot louder and a lot more experimental.
Okay.
The only thing that keeps it from derailing is the brand memory device or some kind of through line in the system, right?
Got it. Okay.
So when you think about the loudness, which is what that blue line is,
Hmm.
we're in the advertising digital end of the spectrum. So we need to be super loud, but
Hmm.
we still need to adhere to the principles of the brand you're defining.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Very
Cool.
cool. Just taking some notes.
You're good. This is like years of me trying to make art into a science or in some way. Um, but anyway, so my very long teacher tangent is all of that to say that um, in the context of a thumbnail, we're going to be a little louder, a little bolder,
Hmm.
and maybe that means our boldness is hyper minimalism, right? As a
Ooh.
differentiator among, all of the loud, crazy textural thumbnails. And that's fine.
Mm.
But we still have to, even at that size, make sure that it feels like a vertical poster that you've accomplished, right? And so there has to be a correlation. And in that poster, if we want to go back to that for a second,
The Nike
um,
ones
the no, sorry,
in
the one
Figma.
design. Yeah.
Which one here? Oh, my
The
poster.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
the
So
horrible poster. Yes.
it's not horrible. It's just it's very editorial. It feels
Okay.
like a magazine cover. And
Yeah.
so and part of that is because of the smaller elements, right?
Right.
There's a lot of like detail oriented elements. But we can take what works here or the things we like here, if this is like the penultimate design, and then start to distill what I've been referring to as the through line. What is the thing that we can consistently use regardless of placement? So that's where I think like people automatically like revert to, does it look pretty, therefore it's successful. And to be fair, as a designer, I'm very particular about the beauty of things.
Yeah.
But I think there is a beauty in understanding the context that you're working in and defining what success is for that context.
Right.
Because you can take all of the elements and put them in a small scale situation or a large scale situation. Whether it's successful is entirely dependent on people, if people understand. And ultimately, graphic design is a communication. So something has to be communicated, and whether that's the beauty of the thing, the content of the thing, or recognizability is entirely dependent on what your metric of success is for your business. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot to consider. To me,
yes, I know I just dumped on you.
no. Like, I think to me, even like logo, right? Like,
yeah.
And let me know if you agree. Like, it shouldn't explain as much, but it should just be more of a recognizable mark more than anything, right? So, and it's something that's unique, and like you said, it's like that through line. So that's why I thought, like, we were going through the different explorations with all these different variations for logo, and we're like, well, I think this rainbow spectrum is the common thing. That's the thread. So what do you say, the through line? So yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, we're looking at examples of like Nike with the swoosh, and now Brandon has applied these, and like, what do you think about that? That kind of ties it together.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. It's giving, particularly with the Struck typeface, it's giving T Magazine a little bit.
T Magazine, okay.
In a good way. T Magazine's a very nice magazine. It's like the New York Times magazine. But what I like about this is there's a clear hierarchy, right? The first is, here's the content that's relevant to you. The next is probably some version, like the content itself, so live stream, whatever, which reinforces why it's relevant to you. And then the tertiary hit is the rainbow itself. So it's like, okay, so this is part of this system, this larger brand that I'm now kind of diving into, which I think is great. This one is probably less successful only because the rainbow itself actually is getting lost because there's a lower contrast between the color and the white background. That's not to say it's not successful, but with the black line at the top compared to the rainbow line, you're missing the correlation that's drawing your eye to it. What I like about these is, again, big, bold type, very communicative, very simple, and easy to read. What is the context of these? This is social media?
Yeah, this is a Square, so Instagram post. I think they were just exploring. Again, it was just initial drafts. I haven't even talked about it with Brandon yet, so.
Fair. So I think, like, with this kind of thing, first of all, there's I'm going to get technical for a second. There's rules and
Yeah.
regulations for the amount of text to image you can have in
Yeah.
social media, particularly around advertising.
Uh-huh.
But if we're just talking like general, like awareness posts, what have you, and it's not necessary, and it's more about like the virality within your immediate community, then this is perfect. This is great, right?
Mhm.
When you get into, oh wait, can you scroll down?
Mhm. Feel free to like go in Figma and I'll follow you. And
I know. I just don't want to. I don't want to like. I'm following your cursor through the.
Oh yeah, got it.
Okay, so
I'll follow you.
yeah.
Yeah, like choose one that like pops, and then like let me know
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't work, because there's so much
So
here.
I think from an editorial perspective, this
Uh-huh.
is. I mean, this is beautiful.
Yeah. Okay.
But just because, I mean, maybe I would. I don't want to like ruin things.
Yeah. So okay, you can just maybe create a copy of this, and then we can tear it apart.
But yeah. There you go. I'm gonna
Like positioning, because before we saw this at the bottom right. So like in terms of logo, like yeah, let's just break apart positioning of content here. What do you think is appropriate?
Okay. I'm just.
Yeah, there you go.
So.
Agreed.
So for me, it really depends on the context here, but
Oh yeah, that's cool.
this is better. I'm playing here, but
Yeah.
personally, I like to play up grids, and so I usually try to do somewhere between 2 to 3 corners of a layout to define the parameters of the grid, and then all other elements kind of like ladder up within that. So maybe even, oh, it's on auto.
You gotta break it.
When you auto layout, go away.
Oh, you gotta ungroup.
I'm just ungrouping it. I'm being lazy.
Yeah.
So, for example,
this one's got a.
Yeah, I see it. I just removed it. There we go. Okay. So let's say, for example, we start to do something like this. Now, what I can do is I can play up the scale of the text so that it's not letting me use the druck for whatever reason.
Oh, I emailed you the.
I downloaded it. I don't know why it's being weird.
Well, feel free to like reassign it if you want.
Well,
Yep.
I don't want to mess things up.
Nah, that's fine.
All right. For the purpose of this discussion, we're going to use Bebas.
Yes.
So basically what I'm trying to get to is you can kind of like start to play up the width and the height of things to kind of like figure out the right number of corners that are spoken to in the grid or something. I'm not doing a very good job here because I'm talking and designing at the same time. But
that's fine.
So.
Okay. Yep.
Something.
See, I agree with this already. Like the hierarchy, main title up top, and then secondary stuff in the bottom, right? Because that's kind of the way your eyes naturally progress.
Exactly.
Yeah. Even this, shouldn't this be on the left as opposed to the bottom right corner?
I mean, it could be literally anything. I'm just right now. I'm kind of just figuring out these elements because they're new to me. But I mean, you could literally okay, this is actually a good example. The one thing about grids is you don't want to do all 4 corners because you get this and it looks really wonky. There are exceptions to the rule. A friend of mine did a brand where all four corners were accounted for, and then there was like an additional elements in the center. And so the 6 elements all together actually worked. But when you have something like this, it starts to feel wonky. So
Oh,
it's
that's
better.
cool.
It's definitely, yeah. This is all about finding balance, right? Like,
Mm.
what's the balance here? And right now we have two larger elements, your face, this type, and then we have these smaller elements, and we're trying to figure out how best to work with them.
Mm.
I think actually we could even simplify this
Yeah,
further.
right.
Um,
Hmm. I would almost like, what if we put that guy just under here, under the main title?
that was a good idea. There you go. So,
And then can we move this a bit up?
yeah, go for it. But long story short, it's figuring out like the proportions of these things together. And I think when you start to look at some of these other examples, I think there's some really nice proportions on the squares, because it's got like 30% of the real estate accounting for the message that you're trying to convey. But then when you get to the YouTube, it's no longer that proportion. It's maybe 25%, maybe less actually. So it's just figuring out how to dynamically play with these things. And it could be that like you could even
Yeah, break the grid.
yeah,
There you
I mean
go.
you can break it, right? And like
Yeah, I
start
love
to
that.
kind of like play with it a little bit. And again, like just making sure all of these things are aligned in a way that why it's really annoying that it's not letting me mess with the type. But like you can start to kind of see how these things start to, like play together. Now, this image is breaking the grid, but the grid is clearly defined by the line or line
By
of
the
sight
text.
rather, because this is bottom aligned with this is
Yep.
left aligned with this, etc.
Mhm.
So you kind of start to define a grid. Now, do I love this here because it looks like it's like jabbing into your neck? No, but like that, yeah, good fix. But the point being is like there's some alignment.
Oops.
Um,
Yeah, I need to align it there.
yeah, and so now you're starting to kind of like play with some things in a more interesting way, and you could even like maybe there we go. And this is a bad example here,
Sprinkle
but
it around. Oh,
you can
okay.
sprinkle it around, or even, and this again is not the way I would normally design, but for the purposes of this conversation, you can
Got like
start
a
picturing
little
like,
wallpaper type of thing.
yeah, just like you can essentially, I mean, you can even play with it, so that it's not so like linear, but the idea is like it can just be
That's
a
cool.
textural background element. It's still conveying, but it's not like so in your face.
Yeah.
And again, that comes down to the level of time spent with your image. So now the first thing you see is what's relevant to me as a viewer, who you are, which is relevant to what the content of your show is. Then you've got more context here of when it's being live streamed, what have you, as well as your name, so that people can start to get familiar with you. Now, do I think that this rainbow thing here is enough?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But like you could theoretically, let's just copy here. This is red. So we could say, okay, this whole thing is red. And
yeah.
Ooh, what did it just do? Okay. Why are you being like that, bro? Covering your face. Bear with me. But it could be as simple as
silhouette.
A silhouette, or even like I'm trying to. Why is it not letting me?
Oh, you're trying to do like a blend?
I'm just having an issue with this Figma for some reason.
There you go. Whoa. Yeah.
And that, I mean, am I saying this is the right solution? No. But like there could be some playful way of, like bringing in the color.
Mm.
And then this could maybe, oops, then this comes over here and it pops. Now it's like in your face,
Yeah.
Do I think this is a good looking design? No, I don't at all. But like, I'm just talking through the principles here,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
there are ways of, like figuring out God, this is driving me crazy. Actually, we're not going to do that, but
So
simple.
so this style, would it follow a certain style? Is this still editorial? Is it something totally different? This is
Well,
kind of
I
like,
mean, I'm going to delete this because
What-
it's paining me. But the like anything that has like a message to be conveyed in
Yeah.
type is technically editorial.
Oh, really?
Um,
Interesting. Okay. So it's very
'Cause
broad. That's a broad
yeah,
term.
editorial is essentially like a discipline. When we say editorial stylistically, we're
Mhm.
talking in terms of art direction. And that means, generally speaking, you're looking at something that has a high exposure, probably a higher contrast, much deeper hues, more saturated. And then you pair that usually with some version of a Swiss type. So if you look at like,
This is what I just Googled. I don't know if
yeah,
this is.
so you're seeing a lot of in studio situations, sometimes more textural, but like there's high contrast, there's a good blend of saturated color, even in the black and whites. And so when you say editorial, depending on the lens you're using,
Mhm.
it's gonna affect the way you think about this. So technically, yes, this is editorial. Would I think that this is, quote, high fashion editorial? Is this something that I would consider a contemporary modern design?
Okay.
No, because what I did here was just a quick demonstration of like how we can play with the grid to make the type a little more in your face. I think what has been designed here by Brandon, I think it was Brandon, right? I think is a really like solid place to be. I'm particularly
Yeah. Cool.
drawn to, where is it? I'm just going to zoom out here. I'm particularly drawn to where this vertical line happened. I don't know. I'm not sure if the relationship of these two, like, because you're essentially switching the orientation of brand element, which is, again, I think it needs to be better defined as to what it's trying to convey. Is it conveying anything, or is it just an identifying mark?
I think more of an identifying mark.
Okay, then using it vertically, totally fine. I also really like what's happening.
I wanted to get your thoughts on this. This little flare.
I love that it speaks to the identifying mark without being so literal. It's a very different message being conveyed, though, because this stylistically starts to read more like you're going to teach me an After Effects video and how to fix that. Or like some kind of video related thing. This starts to read more like layout design because of the type treatment. The only thing I have an issue with is I would maybe make this thinner, not that thin, just so that it's not quite so in your face. And I'd make this way bigger, and maybe switch this secondary information to the bottom. But nuances, right? Like, I think there's something really interesting to this. Actually, I'm going to show you an example real quick of something that I did with type. And this was for advertising, so take it with a grain of salt. But
This is so good. Thanks, Anna. Learning so much.
I hope it's not too much. I figured since we had the time, I'm trying to like
Yeah.
give you what I can.
Let me. Should I post this on? Oh, 15 minutes in now. No one's watching live right now. So
You're fine. You're fine.
I like this.
Is there a way to share my screen?
You can, yeah.
Okay.
I will then have to create something here. Give me a sec.
Please ignore my many tabs. I'm just going to try to exit out of that so you don't.
No worries. I'm not sharing yet.
Okay. This Ecamm thing is cool.
Yeah, I love it. Very, very cool. What do I do? Screen share video. Put this up here. And a screen. All right.
Do you see life-changingly comfy?
Yep. We're good.
Awesome. Okay. So with this, the reason I'm showing it to you is because this particular example is pretty close to what you had as a layout, right? Mm-hmm. It's the 50-50. You've got large type, secondary type down below. There's interesting ways to like play with it, but what I like to do, which you can see here, is I like to kind of think of things in terms of layers. So my first layer in this case is, where I'm always going to be placing my logo. And that way, no matter what I'm looking at, no matter what my users are looking at, they're always going to know where to look for that particular like context of the logo. Okay. Then I have the type. And the type is, in this case, it's really simple. It's literally just like left align, top down situation. But it is designed in a way to not compete with these shapes. And so I use the shapes to be the visual interest. And that's kind of the like push-pull that, you need to find a balance for, because I think there's a way to convey who you are and like what you're talking about on your show, without keeping it super, what's what I'm looking for? While still pumping up the loudness is what I'm looking to say.
Right.
I just thought of an example. Hold on a second. As I was talking, I was like, wait, that's a really good example. God, what's her name? There is a badass lady who runs a podcast that I'm totally drawing a blank on. It's about brand. Oh my God. She's going to hate me for not remembering her name. She is married to Roxane Gay. Hold it, please, while I find this.
Claudine Gay?
No, Debbie.
Debbie Millman.
Yes, Debbie Millman. So, God, how do I not remember her? Jesus. So her podcast is Design Matters, and she does.
Oh,
podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So she is like the end all be all of brand. She is the queen. And you can see from her like design choices that her social media tends to be very minimal. It's very clean. It's very simple, kind of closer to what you're doing. It has a bold typeface, although it looks like a variation of like a Helvetica Neue. But when you get into her YouTube channel, it's loud as shit, right?
Interesting. Let me check it out.
So she's a really good example of like understanding the context and how the brand works. In her case, her through line is just using the same typeface. It's not even like there's not, you know, a consistent system. So yeah, I would use her as a reference because she's got some good
Not the best
some good
thumbnails, but
not the best thumbnails, but I think that's because she records her interviews. But she's got some good references, and also if you have not read any of her books, her articles, what have you, on branding, she's definitely a person to check out. A lot of the things we talked about today is very much in like her wheelhouse and stuff that I learned from her.
Cool. Okay.
So worth
Looks like
a gander. Yeah. And like I said, I think what you have starting with these layouts, these poster designs, if you will, are good. If I were to like take this at a glance, I think for each design, there's always something that you can nudge and judge to make it better or what have you. There's always going to be like pixels to be tightened or whatnot. But I think what is most important at this part of the phase in design is understanding the type usage. And in your case, what it looks like is you've got a very big, bold druck, tightly kerned, tightly leaded. And then you've got for your secondary information, you've got a wider and more tracked, type, which it creates a very different texture and color when you do the squint test, right? So in that sense, it's successful because it one hits you before the other and it creates a new color. I think you could even, sorry, this is driving me crazy that they're not on the same.
Let me know. You want to increase it?
If you're going to increase it, then I would put it down here where it was. But yeah, and so like that's another thing. If you have like sizes in proportion, you're going to want them to align in some way, whether that's vertically, horizontally, diagonally, whatever. There just needs to be some form of an alignment because your eye is always looking for pattern recognition, which is why branding is what it is, right? Your branding is essentially establishing patterns for people to recognize. So in this case, when you're looking at a layout, your eye is going, okay, what are similar sizes? I'm going to put those on the same level of hierarchy. And so when you have we have the same type size on two different levels, but there's just slightly close enough that they could be on the same level. It does create some visual intrigue, but it also creates visual tension. And so if your intention is to create the visual tension for a user or a viewer in this case, then great. But make sure that is an established brand element. Make sure that everything is slightly off kilter so that there's that tension, that friction when you look at something. If your intention is to establish the hierarchy and communicate things and what have you, then you're not going to want that visual tension, because instead of focusing on the content that a viewer is trying to read and understand what it is, they're actually going to be focusing on the other things instead, because they're drawn to where the friction would be. If that makes sense. Look at that face.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to try to fit this in here.
You always fit in, Josh.
Oh, thanks, Anna. I
But
try.
yeah, so those are a few things that I would. And
That's
okay,
scary. Four of me.
um,
See, but and now with the composition of four different people, that changes it too, right? Kind of.
exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because before it was reading as negative space. So
Mm-hmm.
now now it's
Yeah.
not. Now what's interesting is because you have a black shirt and this is a black
Yes, that is
background,
nice.
it looks like it's kind of reading. So you could actually just give me
Let
a
me let me
second.
let me drag in some other guys here. Hey, feel free to like bring in your photo in here too. Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad you are trying that. That was something I wanted to run by you. Like, what if we just like as a recognizable thing, a top bar,
Yeah. And
and then you can yeah we can keep this if we want, but like this is kind of like that recognizable marker.
yeah.
That's kind of cool.
See now this totally changed. See now it goes from reading as a whole element into multiple elements because before
Mm-hmm.
um, it was like the black shirt was kind of blending into the black background,
Yeah.
and now it's got this defined line
Yeah.
because of the. So then in this case it
Yeah.
does
If
make
we
sense.
bring that in.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
I think Brandon's yeah, he's onto something here with the
yeah,
separator.
I still think, and this is really just a preference thing.
Ooh.
Um, it does. It looks good. It's almost like a movie. You've got
Mm.
the different.
The
Uh,
characters, yeah.
no, the what is it called when you the film? You've
Oh
got each
yeah.
frame,
Yeah.
and you've got the. There we go. Oh, I need my coffee. Okay, but uh, if you have the negative space like you
Yeah.
do here,
Mm-hmm.
this is again a personal preference,
Mm-hmm.
not at all scripture by any means, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it's worth playing with it because right now you have when you look at this, you've got your eye kind of going here, and then it comes back
Yeah.
around down here, and then it goes over here. So
Right.
there's not a there's a lack of continuity for me. So
Yeah.
that's where I mean I think
Yes. There you
start to
go.
and it could you could even put it here or you
Yeah.
can kind of play similar to that other
Yeah.
one. Why does it not want me to play with the type?
But what if we just yeah. Okay, you don't want an orphan word in there, right? I think that's why he
Yeah.
but in this case, if you can just change it, it's like that. That works. And it's like a nice one line title. That works.
Okay, but
Does
if
it
you're
not?
going to do that, so then we run into the same problem that we had before, where it starts to feel like a
Mm,
sandwich, right?
mm.
And so, um,
A sandwich, yeah. I like sandwiches, I guess.
I mean, sandwiches are good.
Yeah.
I like them
Interesting.
too.
So,
Oh, had multiple.
yeah.
Hold, please. Wait, did you change the type just now? Oh,
Um.
you
Mm,
reverted it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, can you
Oh,
because it
bring it
won't let
back.
me. Oh, your Brandon's auto layouts are messing with me. I just
Give
want
me a
to mess with it.
second. Give me a sec here.
I like auto layouts, but not for like exploratory
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I can mess with it, but it's fine.
Okay.
But basically, what I was trying to do is, if you're going to do that, then this
Yeah.
it it needs to be up
At the top.
at the top and with a little more of the negative space, and then because the weight, the visual weight of the pictures in with the color, it starts to make it lopsided. It makes it feel heavy at the top, and so you can kind of start to even.
And let's get rid of these bars.
I'm not. I mean, it needs to.
Yeah.
This is the thing about type across the full, like a full bleed. It's really hard to balance unless you do, for
Hmm.
example, what you did with the editorial stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Oh, but then see my background.
Now, this is not by any means what I would, but you can start now. You're starting to like balance it a little bit, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying it, but this is kind of this is where I need to just sit with these assets for like 10 minutes and and then come
Yeah.
back.
Okay, well,
Um,
your thoughts on in terms of hierarchy of content. Do you prefer title at the top and then image? Like this is obviously primary and then secondary, right? If there was such a hierarchy, or
Depends on the
the way
context.
Brandon's doing it.
If we're talking like social media,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about a magazine, there's a reason titles are always at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wouldn't the same principle apply for social media though? More or less?
no, because it's a vertical scroll. So like
Okay.
if you're looking to convey a message before the punchline, which is what the context is, then there's like when you're scrolling through Instagram, you see who it is, but like you're going to see the image and then you see the content. So like the hierarchy is all out of whack anyway. But if you were to scroll through, say, a grid wall of various articles you can reference, it's going to be it's going to depend on the context. Sometimes they do title first and then image. Sometimes they do image and then title. Personally, when you have a vertical format, I like to have some kind of context first, just so that people are aware that there's a content change or, that there's something being introduced.
And when you say context, you mean image or something?
No,
not text?
it could, like the first thing you could see here. Why is my computer not?
Do you want to reset your
yeah,
your Figma?
take me off for a second because this is driving me crazy.
Yeah.
For someone who just competed with like a live Figma thing, I'm like having so many issues with it right now. So I can't. Gotta fix that. Give me a second.
All good. How's the music on your end?
Oh, it's good.
Not the best quality on like listening as a guest on Ecamm, but it comes out all right.
Okay, so
Nothing?
No, it is still being legit.
You can you can apply your own. Can you apply your own text over and then just
yeah, I think what I'm just gonna go back over here and just play with this and play with the ugly layout. I say that as even though I made it. Okay. So
here's one, two. Oops. I didn't duplicate that. There you go.
So for me, if this were a social media post, I would want the live June 14th, whatever, at the top, because it's like people are going to be like, oh, what is this? It's live. What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Then I would follow it with what it is and having some kind of like information hierarchy here.
So you're saying you're saying vertical, like if it's scrolling vertical.
Yeah. So as I'm scrolling this way.
Yeah. So right, they're gonna see the top first and then go down. Whereas like a typical magazine layout or something, they see it all at once, and that totally changes the way the design, the layout should be.
Absolutely. There's a reason logos are usually at the bottom and not the top.
Why is that?
When you think about it, like again, line of sight, you're reading left to right, top to bottom, at least in Western cultures. So you're essentially conveying a message first, which is why should I care as a viewer? Then you're hitting them with some kind of visual support, or a lot of times in advertising, you have a see and say. So you see a visual that catches your eye, and the completion of the thought is in the content itself and the words. So it's like it forces a user to kind of use their head a little bit and be like, oh, I'm completing the story of the visual and the type together. So then you have that kind of happening down, 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 and then the punchline or the thing that makes it sticky is the logo or the
Right.
tag with the logo, where it's kind of
signature.
like explaining the whole story. Yeah.
Okay.
So it, like I said, it depends on the usage, right, and where it's being put.
I kind of like this. What do you think?
It's getting there. We're getting there. But actually,
Or
I know I
mean,
said
like the bottom bar, the way you did that.
oh yeah, I like the
Right?
bottom bar for sure.
neat.
I think it grounds it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
I can't. Can you make this left aligned? Because it won't let me. Thank you. Because you could do similar to what that other thing did, which, oh my god, I'm gonna just change this. It's
Yeah, it's just I have okay, yeah, that's good. I have so many more questions for you.
Go for it. What's up?
Well, after you're done with this, I just want to like get your thoughts on the overall variations.
I mean, this is not at all what I would.
But what I'm understanding is there's a lot of it depends answers. It's like, what's the best? It depends. What do you want to accomplish? What's your context?
Well, okay. If you want like definitive rules, okay, let's move past this. Let's just chat. If you want to like talk definitive rules, there are absolutely rules.
Yeah.
But because design is all dependent on the parameters that it's working in, I don't like to say the rules are the rules and only the rules, right? Like in Swiss design, it's absolutely that way. You have a grid, you align to said grid, you make sure all of your type fits within that grid, and you do not go outside the grid. When you start breaking the grid and creating more dynamic, work, then the rules are still there to help inform, but like you're intentionally breaking them, right? So people say don't use true black on web, stick to 3 typefaces max. And by typefaces I mean type sizes. Try to stick with 1 typeface, maybe even 2. If you break the rules and do like a whole brand system with 5 different typefaces, go for it, but make sure that the X height is the same throughout all the different typefaces so that you're not creating some like visual vibrant or vibrations that makes it harder to read, etc. So there's rules to design, but I throw all the rules out the window until you establish like what you're trying to actually convey, right? Like what's the important thing that you're trying to do, and whatever rules you define are in service of that intention. So that's why I ask a lot of questions. That's why I'm saying, well, it depends on what you're trying to do, because ultimately, if your goal is to be the simplest, minimal, whatever, then me saying, hey, focus on like a little more texture with the imagery or what have you is like that would be counterintuitive to what you're trying to actually achieve. Even though from like an advertising standpoint, texture, color, and saturation are going to be your best friends for catching people's eyes. Because again, people are looking for they focus on the hierarchy, the emphasis, and then they look for pattern. So if you can entrap them with both, then then you've succeeded, at least from an advertising perspective.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I want to get your thoughts on first thing, there's like so many things I want, like this serif as a title
Yeah.
versus the Druck. Like real quick, what's your
Gut
gut
reaction?
feel? Yeah.
Bigger is better.
Okay.
Druck.
And because it's just, in this case, social media, you just want loud, grabs your attention. Yeah.
Yes and no.
Okay.
If you go, so from the difference is with the serif typeface, you're doing camel case. You have lowercase and uppercase, and that works for a particularly for a serif typeface. It makes it very legible, but it also means that you're going to have a lot more negative space around the letter forms themselves. So it reads a little softer when you do like the blur test, the squint test.
Yeah.
If you close your eyes, you're not going to see it as much. Whereas your Druck is all caps, very tightly kerned, very tightly leaded, and so when you squint your eyes, it reads as a big block of shape, and therefore it catches your eye faster.
Okay. Cool. Wow. The science behind your decisions, amazing. Okay. And then, so I think I have a preference, but there's the black version and then the white version. Like,
is it true white?
I think, yeah, this is true white for now.
I think the lighter version would work if you did a very light gray, like super light gray.
Yeah, I love that.
But I would need to see the light gray in relation to the rainbow, because there might be some contrast issues from a pure accessibility standpoint, from like and from like a boldness standpoint. Black is better.
Right. So it's purely because of we're dealing with contrast, right?
Yes, for the type and the rainbow.
Right. Okay. And then, I mean, so we're dealing with like these layouts where it's image.
Oh, sorry. One caveat.
Yeah.
One caveat. If you treat the type and the elements the same, regardless, I would use white for other contexts and black only for the thumbnails.
Oh, okay. Can you explain more?
Because you're keeping the system the same, you're just changing the context of the color, like inverting the color essentially.
Yeah,
so
like dark mode.
Yeah. So it's more or less the same. You're just adapting for your environment.
Okay.
I just also feel like the white would get lost on a white YouTube background. Then again, black could get lost on a black YouTube background. So this is really just a judgment call.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay, so we're dealing with these like half designs, right? 50-50 split. Even with this, we have multiple guests. It's still 50-50. We got 3 guests. Now, with my beautiful design there, what was it earlier? My sandwich. Can you just break down? Yeah, let's compare these two. So we got this guy. And then let's bring... What do we have? Yeah, this guy here. Do you think like this checks off more the fundamental layout principles versus this one? Or again, yeah, like you're talking about, there's some what is it? It's competing for attention here with all these different elements.
In this example, on the bottom that you've chosen, the first thing I see is your face.
Yeah.
Which it could very well be what you're trying to do, and then in that case, it's successful. You have better proportions of image to type scale. I also just personally am not a huge fan of like I said, just bannering type all the way across, full bleed. I think the type itself is naturally designed to have a rag, which is when the negative shape that appears on the side of a paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you have a rag, it looks better. So like in this case where it says brand in progress, like it would be brand and maybe in progress on a second line. So that way you kind of have like a more interesting rag or something. But I think it's more successful in that it's less of a sandwich because it adapts to the horizontal format in a better way. That said, from everything you've shown me, this example on the bottom and the top, and then the vertical layout that you showed me, which was kind of inspiration for all of this, they feel like three entirely different brands. And that's because of the type. It's because of the way that the image is being treated. It's because the way the rainbow is being treated. So whatever feels right to you, I would just make that consistent.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Let me see. I do think this is more successful. I still think that there are a lot of smaller elements that aren't needed in the thumbnail.
Yeah, we get rid of these.
Yeah, I think getting rid of that, keeping the time, and maybe even making the time bigger. So that way, like it could be, which could be cool. And I'm gonna do it in not that one because I can't use your typeface. It could be something as simple as, let me just make this tighter so it reads similarly. We've got brand in progress with Josh Lowe. I can't type, Jesus Christ. And then you've got your thing over here, and maybe this then comes down here or something where you start to kind of, yeah, that's better. Yeah. Now you've got like a little bit of a, and it feels much more editorial, and it's kind of, bigger and whatever. And especially when you do it in the direct typeface, it's gonna pop a lot more.
It's interesting. Now, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not saying, to be clear, that is the best layout for what you're trying to convey. I'm just saying, like, now all the important information is the first thing you get. And then the relationship, similarly, like we talked about with advertising, the relationship of the text to the image are now starting to make sense.
Okay. So coming back to these examples here, it really starts to follow this formula.
Yeah.
Text on the left, image on the right. I mean, if you look, it's always follows the same
because
thing.
that's the way people read.
Yeah.
Left to right, top to bottom.
Yeah.
So you're following the natural order of how a person's eye is going to want to interpret it.
Yeah. All right, I'm just gonna follow the future and just rip off from them and apply my brand colors.
I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you want to experiment with stuff, I would say a place with real estate, like proper real estate, is the place to do it, not in a thumbnail. Like if you're gonna experiment and like break rules, do it in a like a something you mail out, or do it in a social post, or somewhere where breaking the rule of the formula is going to be appreciated and can actually be sat with for a little bit, rather than something that's glancery.
Yeah, more or less this follows the same principles. What do you think about Figma's thumbnails? This is like kind of bold.
It's extremely bold, but they also have an established visual system for it to relate to. It's like the Tiffany's effect, right? Like I look at those colors and that type and I go, I know exactly which brand that is, because they have done such a good job at reinforcing it throughout everything they put out. which again, that could be your thing too, right? Like you can make it super minimal, type centric, but your type has to be like the way you treat your type has to be super rigid.
Mm.
Um, and then they have these shapes that they use to kind of add some like context, texture, whatever. And I think those are really interesting. But they have such a unique typeface with the ink traps inside of it that like it's instantly recognizable. So
what
with
font
that,
is that?
area, oh God, I used to know. I don't know. Until I've had my coffee, I don't know. Let me look it up. Hold on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that. That's good. Interesting. Okay, so you like to experiment with things. I would almost say YouTube thumbnail could be an area to experiment too. If that's kind of my thing, then I would have to treat my thumbnails to be always experimental. Then that's like the consistent thing about it.
Yeah. Yes. Again, like it's all about what you're trying to convey. Because technically speaking, if you wanted to, you could say fuck the rules and only do an image, and that's it. You just have an image. Or you could only have type like Figma does. But it's really just dependent on, you're gonna trade a design system for potential acquisition metrics, and that's entirely up to you.
That's a no-no in our books, right?
Well, it depends on who you talk to.
Okay, all right. And now, what do you think about, okay, like let's say we have this, we just decided to go with this layout, and then converting it into different layouts, like the square and then the vertical.
Somebody's been having fun with variables.
No, this is so fun. It's cool because you can just drag it over. But yeah, what do you like? Do you think this is a misuse of it? Because all I'm doing is just making it from horizontal to vertical, and it's more or less the same content.
No, I don't think I don't know if I understand the question entirely, but I don't think that there could ever be an instance where that's a misuse.
Yeah. Okay.
I think understanding how your system works in vertical and horizontal fashions is a requirement, a minimum requirement for any brand in 2023. And so having a quick, easy way to do that is going to be extremely advantageous. But in this case, you have a very clear like understanding of what you're trying to convey in your brand, and it doesn't feel the same as what was being conveyed in the other example that you shared.
Interesting. Okay.
Because the type is different, the use of color is different. One's color blocking, and not one's using full bleed color blocking. They're different brands, and those small details add up to a larger cohesiveness and recognizability. So that, like, so I think whatever you do, definitely have a vertical and horizontal fashion figured out, but it doesn't necessarily, but it does absolutely need to be consistent, and it doesn't necessarily work where it is right now.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Anna. I think that covers a lot. I got a lot.
Covered a lot.
Yeah. I hope you had fun.
Yeah,
I really appreciate your time. This was very informative.
I hope it was. I usually I like to get in there and get my hands dirty and like show some work, but unfortunately with not having
broken
file before and having some issues with my type, I didn't get to. But
dang.
I think like you've got all the elements, and whichever direction you end up going is a solid one for sure.
Okay.
It's just whatever you do, you have to commit to it, and kind of put all your eggs in a basket, so to speak. Um, that's not to say it can't evolve over time, but at minimum, your color usage, your type, and the way that the type is treated is going to be your consistent thing in the upfront. Um, your brand memory device, or the rainbow, I think it's really interesting. I think right now there's almost a fear in over usage, or in diluting it in some way, or what have you. And I think if you push the boundaries of how that rainbow is used with imagery, and maybe like a 70-30 relationship, between where 70 is the minimalist bold type and negative space, and then 30% is image, and it's bright and it's bold and it's in your face.
Okay.
I think there's something there where you can start to kind of have a nice contrast between the two. On the flip side, if you're not going to do that, go full bullheaded brutalism in my mind.
Yeah, I kind of want to do that.
Then do it. Like, just do it. But what I can tell you is your type treatment right now is not that, because you have a lot of little elements that are causing visual disturbance to the minimalism. And so if you're going to do it, really do it. Like take your elements and remove two things, right? Usually it's like take it and remove one. In this case, remove two if you're gonna do it. And just commit to that, because it is bold, it's confident, it's very interesting and nice to look at. But it when you do that, every detail matters. The kerning on your type matters. The leading on your type matters. The roundness on your iconography, everything matters. So instead of adding visual elements to it to kind of like hide things, just focus on the core elements and make those perfect.
Okay, there's something I want to show you. I took a picture of it. I'm gonna try to drop it on my computer here. Let's see if I can drag it over. The Brutalist is fun. I think it's very energetic, and like my brand, I want it to be all about play. And I think I'm a huge fan of minimalism and like the editorial and just having a really nice organized like grid layout. But where is it? This guy. Let's see, it's gonna load. But like, I love the trend of the 90s deconstructive design. And I saw this and I love that, just like that rainbow. And I think just something stupid like this is kind of fun. And so, like, even with like posters, or like people can generate like user generated content. If we have workshops to teach them to do this, it'll be fun to post on social media too. But
totally. But this, I don't consider brutalism. This is kind of where my head was at when I was saying push the rainbow thing, add some color, figure out your hierarchy in a way that negative space is 70-30 positive space, right? This is very much in that realm. You're adding a bit of play, you're having fun with color, your type is very pulled back, but it's still bold and recognizable. Brutalism, in my mind, is you take everything here except the logo and the type, and that's it. And the logo doesn't even, I mean, it could have color, but like keep that black and white too. Just super simple, very, very minimal. So, because brutalism by definition is, you only use the elements that makes up the thing that's needed and nothing else.
Could you show examples? Could you like share your screen? And
let me see if I can find something for you.
I would love to. see what your definition is. By the way, I know we're like an hour and 40 minutes in, so
Yeah, I do have to get back to my classes. Let me see if I can. I'm
we
trying to
have
find.
Devin. I think Devin's still watching. What's up, Devin?
Hi, Devin. Let me see if I can find. A lot of Swiss design is probably closer to brutalism. Let me see if I can find. Dieter Rams is
Okay. Yep.
an example of brutalism. This is a good example of brutalism from.
I'll need you to share your screen.
I'm gonna send you the link in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yes, okay.
That's brutalism. And those examples following, especially the one on the right, even then that one has like some littler elements. So I would argue that it's not true brutalism, but like literally just the minimum
Yes.
and making it work. That's brutalism.
Okay. Like big type, using text as an element as well.
Sometimes it's small type, but in editorial cases, they tend to be larger. Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, I love this. This is like nice with lines, clean, white space.
That's Swiss. So
This
you
is
like Swiss.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I like
So
Swiss too.
This wouldn't be brutalism per se.
No, that's also Swiss
Okay.
because it's just a lot of elements on the page.
This is Swiss as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Called Swiss design?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a mid-century movement out of Switzerland, obviously.
Okay, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is like that. My poster was just kind of based on. I mean, this is so typical.
That's brutalism.
Okay, why is that? How is
Because
that much different?
the only information on that page is what's needed. You have what it is, wonder, you have the picture, and then you have it looks like the date and the picture number. Yeah. It's like
interesting.
the most bare minimum elements you could use. Now the treatment of the type is Swiss because it's on a grid and whatever, but like the use of elements is brutalist. Yeah.
So then you can almost call that minimalism too, right?
Yep. Minimalism is the umbrella for Swiss, for brutalism, for a lot of like material design that came out for a while there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, okay. Sorry for all these questions.
No, you're
How does Bauhaus fit into all that?
So
that seems to be
I'm
more
trying to figure out how much of a history lesson I want to do right now. So Bauhaus is similar. It's still technically within the minimalism world, we'll say. But long story short, how do I phrase this? Bauhaus is the four
brutalism is like, we need to build a building, we only have concrete and we want lights.
Exactly.
More concrete, so we'll just use holes for natural light. Yeah.
Well done, Devin. But so Bauhaus is kind of the forerunner of Russian constructivism. They influenced each other greatly. So the two are, well, I should say Bauhaus influenced constructivism. And so basically while Bauhaus is very much about minimalism and just the core elements, there's also a shapeliness to it that was informed by Art Deco as well. So similar to brutalism and what Devin was saying, Bauhaus was primarily started as a movement in architecture that then became an influence in, yes, thank you, Devin, you win.
You should hop on here. Bauhaus equals mass production, but make it beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. So there's more of a shapeliness to it. And there's a lot of repetition. And it was, like I said, it was informed by Art Deco. So that's where the shapeliness comes in, and that's why there's usage of verticality and whatnot. Whereas Swiss is primarily, there is verticality that happens, but primarily it keeps to the grid in a very structured way. And you could argue Swiss is almost the evolution of Bauhaus in graphic design, particularly.
Dang, I feel like we can dive into a whole other
Oh
episode.
yeah, art history is, well, especially design history is very rich.
Yeah.
It's very.
Do you love all that?
Oh yeah. In fact, so I started out, I think I told you this, I wanted to be a scientist, and then I found my way into art. And so I started very late compared to my peers, and I was desperately trying to catch up to people who had been in art school literally their entire lives. And so I studied. I studied all the greats. I studied art history. I studied the history of type. I studied the history of design. I mimicked where I could until I learned what made it work. So a lot of like what we talked about today was me just like, that's all the distillation of all the different histories that I've kind of taken on over the course of my career and education. And so I put it in a way that I could essentially treat it as science. What's the sustains? What's the variables? And build my designs based on those contexts. So
good. Yeah. Well, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I appreciate it. I think you should do more. I mean, once you're done with your courses, I think you should.
Yeah, I love collaborating. I love, talking through this stuff always. Maybe if and when we do this again, we can keep it a little more structured, because as you can see, I will go in every direction. But I'm always down to talk about these things. I haven't been a teacher in a few years, but with my students, it was the best thing to be able to kind of go off on a tangent and kind of provide context for the things that we did. So that's always the fun part for me.
Yeah, I would love, Devin's still in here. I would love to have both of you guys on and just
Devin, let's do it.
Hours. That'd be good. All right, Anna, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And everyone loves it too. No, I had a lot of fun and I learned so much. And I hope you had some fun with us, with me.
I did, always. Yeah. You're my favorite. So it was good to see you again after Config.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Yes, for sure. All right, okay. Devin. See you, buddy. See you, Anna.
Bye.
Take care.